Hey everybody, welcome to my More on Mondays. And this week, as I mentioned on Sunday, a little bit different for you today. I've got my eldest son here, Aaron, and we've not scripted this. We're just going to have a short conversation because one of the things about this particular text on the Lazarus particular story, Jesus saying, "I'm the resurrection and the life," is that I knew that not long ago Aaron was invited to be the speaker at a high school camp from a church in California, and this was their text for the weekend. And I know he delivered a few talks, a few messages in and around the Mary, Martha, Lazarus account. And so as we go through things, I'm just going to throw a couple of questions at Aaron in terms of what's the application, what do we get from this? So kind of like I'm with you having a conversation. That's what we're going to do. Now, before we dive into some of that, let me just look in John 11. You're in John 11 right now. The way the text is split up. First of all, you have this moment. We know that Mary, Martha, and Lazarus and Jesus were close. They were close friends. And so when Lazarus is sick, it's obvious for Martha, go get Jesus. Go get Jesus. That's the first section. We know that Jesus doesn't go straight away. We know he's got a bigger picture in mind. And then eventually he takes his disciples with him. And the last time they're in that vicinity, Jesus basically almost gets, threatened to be killed. And so some of the disciples are like, let's go and die there too. As we see, Thomas says that in verse 16, then Thomas, called Didymus, said to the rest of the disciples, let us also go that we may die with him. I mean, wow, the image of death in and around all of this. And that was my message on Sunday. What is the answer to death's demands? And we know the answer is Jesus saying, I'm the resurrection and the life. But let's look at this text, this situation, have a conversation around it. And so the story goes, Jesus does arrive. He's greeted by Martha. Martha has an interaction with Jesus. If you'd been here, this wouldn't have happened. He's dead now. Basically, Jesus, you're late. Like, why are you late? There has these moments, and then Jesus makes this declaration, the key declaration, verse 25, I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me will live, even though he dies. And whoever lives and believes in me will never die. And then he says, do you believe this? Do you believe this? Conversation goes on, and then we have Martha going to Mary and saying, hey, the teacher is here. The teacher is here in that moment. So, Aaron, with that moment, we're kind of like in verse like 28, 29. It starts there. That response from Mary, what do you glean from that? Just share that with us. What do you glean from that?
Yeah, when I was preparing for the messages for the camp in California, these were the verses that stuck out from 29 through to 31. So I'll just read it. When Mary heard this, she got up quickly and went to him. Now Jesus had not entered the village, but was still at the place where Martha had met him. When the Jews who had been with Mary in the house, comforting her, noticed how quickly she got up and went out, they followed her, supposing she was going to the tomb to mourn there. Those were the key verses because it shows that once Mary knew that Jesus was on his way, she didn't wait around. She didn't want to initially wait till he gets there. She was like, I'm going to go meet him there. And it was more that's the go-to. Like, what do you do when you know that this is the time I'm in, this is the situation I'm in? And then Jesus is, he's on his way, he's right there. Do you get up quickly? But I like in verse 31 because it says, when Mary did this, all the other Jews who were around her got up and went with her, but they were supposing she was just going to go and mourn some more at the tomb. But really, she was going to the one who was the opposite of mourning. And so, like, to lead is to, you're going somewhere where most people will look at it and think, oh, she's going there, or he is going there to just be more sad, be more worried, be more fearful. But by you moving towards Jesus in the time of despair, it's actually going to take others with you where they thought they were just going to go and mourn some more.
That's really good. I just noticed right now, it says that you noticed how quickly
Yeah.
she got up and went out. That
Mhm.
urgency.
Yeah.
Like, wow, she didn't just slowly get up. There was a sense of urgency, and maybe a sense of real no. It's still possible, you know. It's still possible. But it's interesting that Mary and Martha both kind of come up with this, Lord, if you'd been here, my brother would not have died. Like, if you'd been here, my brother would not have died. And I wonder in your lives, do you have those questions? Like, where were you, God? If you'd been here earlier, why did you let this happen? Why, why now? Why me? They're all really key questions, and that comes to that big key question: what is the answer to death's demands? And there's different kinds of death, not just physical death. Then we have that verse 35, shortest verse in the Bible. Jesus wept. We do you ever think about the emotion of God, how he genuinely feels? Why is that in there? There's a genuine compassion and emotion. Don't want to dwell on it, but I want you to think about it. Does God care? There is a deep-rooted emotion related to all of that. Then we have the account of Jesus actually going to the tomb, and we know the rest of the story. He calls Lazarus out, but the reason is Jesus said, "Did I not tell you? You'd see the glory of God. You'd see the glory of God. Look, this is what it is. Because God's story from beginning to end is the renewal of all things. It's the word resurrection is to return back to life, to bring things back the way they were originally intended. This is God's glory being revealed in his power. But let's just get to this particular moment of Jesus calls Lazarus out. It's been 4 days. Just a little insight. There is some scholars and commentaries who would say that in Jewish thinking, the soul of somebody, the spirit of somebody, would still be in and around the person for up to 4 days until it then goes for up to 4 days. So the 4 day thing was about right. It's almost like it's been 4 days physically, but he's not fully gone on his next journey yet. There's that kind of a thinking. So that's the significance of the 4 days. But Jesus calls Lazarus out. And, all right, Aaron, speak into any of that, the whole calling out, and what does that mean in application for maybe our lives, for those high schoolers' lives you were talking about? What's the symbolism of this account of Jesus calling Lazarus out of the grave?
Yeah. I think you can often read this part and think that it's just a part of the whole gospel story that's irrelevant to you, but it shows how powerful Jesus is, but I think that Jesus calls us out of graves every day, every week, and it's our responsibility what we do next. And I think, again, what stuck out to me that I knew I had to share to these high schoolers was the very last part of this whole account, where Jesus just says, Jesus said to them, "Take off the grave clothes and let him go." I think that stuck out to me and resonated with me because we can often be brought out of a grave, be brought out of a situation or a past regret or a past shame or a mistake. Jesus has brought us out of them, but we want to keep the grave clothes on. We don't want to take them off and go into something new. And the thing is, like, I forgot, it does say in this account somewhere that, like, when they moved the stone of Lazarus' grave, there was a really bad smell. And
Yeah.
I think, like, Jesus says, take off the grave clothes. Like, if you don't take off the clothes of what was your tomb, then you're going to have a bad odor. You're going to just smell like your past. But if you smell of something new, where Jesus brought you out of it, said, take them off, wear these new clothes, you can say, I was wearing these clothes that did smell really bad, but God brought me out of a tomb and told me to take those clothes off.
I mean, it's pretty graphic. It's that verse 39, take away the stone. But Lord, said Martha, the sister of the dead man, by this time there is a bad odor. Those of you who've been around church a long time, remember the first time I heard this account, the King James Version says, but Lord, he stinketh. He stinketh. This is such a funny word, but there is a bad odor. That's really interesting that, yeah, we can go into a new season of life, and unless we take off we still carry that aroma of past death, sin, instead of new clothes. That's a really good thing. I wonder for some of you today, what is it that actually it's just time to take them off. It's time to really embrace the freedom of forgiveness and restoration, and don't live like you once lived. It's new. There's a return back to life. I know there is a grave in the Middle East. I think it's in Larnaca where Lazarus is laid, and it says, "Here lies Lazarus, twice dead." It's pretty powerful, twice dead. But I do know that second life that he had, there's no way he could have been the same again. Like, no way he could have been the same again. Take off the grave clothes and let him go. Yeah. Aaron, any more last applications you want to share with the people here today?
And I just really resonate with Mary and Martha, because when Jesus is there and he's available to go into Lazarus's grave, but their reaction then is saying, "No, but there's a bad smell." I think that we can all often do that too, where we know that Jesus is available to come into a grave. There's somewhere in our life that's a grave, but we're still scared that it smells too bad for him, or it's too heavy, or we don't want to reveal that to him because we're too ashamed of it. But there's a greater purpose in that. And where he says take off the grave clothes, it makes me think of when Jesus said to the paralyzed man who could now walk, take up your mat and go. And it's more of if I'd just taken off grave clothes and got some new clothes, and even though I was just dead, I feel like I would want to still carry the grave clothes to show what just happened. Like when he said
the testimony.
Yeah, take the mat and go. He could have said leave the mat, but I think take the testimony of your grave clothes and where Jesus brought you out of it. It's gonna take people to Jesus just like they did. So.
It's good. So there you go. That's it for this week. What is your application? Send in some notes and questions as we do this. And what are you reading? Read through that whole. It's a longer passage in this I Am series. From verse 1 all the way through to verse 44. And then as we know, some people weren't happy. If you keep reading the text, here they go again. The plot to kill Jesus thickens. And you go, wow, pretty incredible. He was so offensive. Thanks for being with us today. If you've got any questions or notes, let me know. And I'll see you all again online soon.